Is ready. The first, we talk about Dwight Howard's decision. He is going to the Houston Rockets after a season of speculation. What many people thought was a bad match has ended. Friday, Howard agreed to a 4-year, $88 million contract with the Rockets. Stephen A., you've been very candid about this. You spoke with Dwight. So we want you to walk us through his decision as to why he decided to leave the Lakers.
First of all, Dwight Howard was leaning towards going to Houston long before the season had come to an end. If you remember, on several occasions, you know, even though I left out hope for the Los Angeles Lakers because of that additional $30 million that was on the table, I was on the record saying that Houston had a better than 50-50 chance of doing this, and I thought he would go to Houston simply because, number one, when the season, 5 games into the season, when Jim Buss elected to let go of Mike Brown, I pointed out how Dwight Howard had asked for Phil Jackson and was rebuffed. Then as the season progressed and they struggled, and that kind of heat he was experiencing, that didn't help. Then there was some friction at one time, at least earlier on, between him and Kobe Bryant before that ultimately was resolved. Then after that, near the tail end of the season, Mike D'Antoni and the frenetic pace that he likes to play at, even though he had modified that to some degree, basically said, I'm the coach, you're the player, you know, because Dwight Howard wanted them to throw the ball inside more, and D'Antoni had not elected to do that until he absolutely had to once Kobe Bryant went down. So for an organization and a team that was looking at Dwight Howard as the future, saying he was the heir apparent to the Kobe Bryant era, clearly they didn't take that too seriously because they weren't doing much to appease him. Having signs embarrassing themselves, by the way, by having signs talking about please stay and all of that stuff. I mean, talk about really belittling yourself and lowering yourself to sub-Laker standards. That's what they did all in of themselves. But ultimately, it came down to this. Dallas was never a viable candidate. That was just a gratuitous interview that was granted. The same thing could be said for the Atlanta Hawks. They never had a chance, okay? The Golden State Warriors had creeped up into things because obviously they could unload contracts and ultimately get him and pair him with a guy like Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Harrison Barnes. But in the end, it came down to the $30 million extra or the Houston Rockets. And James Harden had been working Dwight Howard all season long. They've been spending a lot of time together throughout the last month. Throughout the month of June, they were seen together, all of this other stuff. So it was pretty much a foregone conclusion. But ultimately what it came down to is this. I asked Dwight Howard this question when he called me on vacation and asked me to report that he definitely, quote him as saying he's going to the Houston Rockets. I said to him, if Phil Jackson were the coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, would you be leaving? His answer was a flat-out no. I would be staying with the Los Angeles Lakers. That's not to say that at one time or another there wasn't friction with him and Kobe, even though that wasn't really the factor in the end. That's not to say he has anything personal against Mike D'Antoni, because he doesn't. Actually, most people consider Mike D'Antoni a relatively decent man. You have all of that stuff going on. But in the end, what it comes down to is the direction of this franchise moving forward. Without Phil Jackson, you have to have faith in Jim Buss. And there's nobody with sense that has faith in Jim Buss.
But can we surmise that you're saying that they chose D'Antoni over Dwight?
Yes. Yes, because that's what it comes down to. Because you could say they chose D'Antoni or they chose the Laker way. We're not going to capitulate. Because remember, Kobe Bryant wanted Bryant, sure. Kobe Bryant didn't want Mike Brown. But they hired Mike Brown, not listening to Kobe. So it's really not an indictment against, a particular player or even support for a particular coach. It's the Lakers saying, we're going to do things our way. The problem is, welcome to the era of Jim Buss. Because everybody respects Mitch Kupchak. The man just has accomplished too much, even though he's a successor to Jerry West, and some of the initial success he enjoyed was because of Jerry West. Ultimately, he's the one that pulled off the Kwame Brown trade for Pau Gasol that delivered 3 straight appearances to the NBA Finals and 2 straight NBA championships. But what it comes down to, more so than anything, Skip, is the fact that Jim Buss is running this operation. And he is a guy. I'm not accusing him of not knowing basketball. I'm accusing him of allowing his ego to supersede his basketball acumen and to get caught up in what he wants as opposed to what is best for Laker Nation. I told you, I sat right here at this table before the trading deadline, and I said, trade Dwight now. You cannot lose him for nothing. And they were like, we're very confident. Go back to the statements from Jim Buss. We're very confident Dwight Howard will stay. Talk about arrogance. It really, really is sad. But that's Laker Nation right now.
We'll get to the Jim Buss and D'Antoni hire in just a moment, a little more. But I want to hear your...
I get to talk.
I want to hear your thoughts on this. It is your turn.
I'm so excited because it's so much fun to sit and listen to my friend Stephen.
I thought you were asking me to give you the lowdown.
I did. And I respect the heck out of all the reporting you have done on this. I loved every fact that you laid out for us. And now I'm about to give you my unvarnished opinion from a distance. I don't know Dwight Howard. I've never talked to Dwight Howard one time on the telephone.
Oh.
I've spoken to him in the hallway at ESPN. That's about it.
By the way,
go ahead.
before you go any further, Dwight Howard would like to come on the show.
Good.
And he is planning.
He may really want to come on after I get through with this.
He is planning on coming on. I just want to say that to you before you went into
You are welcome. Tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, you name it, you are welcome. You can sit right here. For 2 solid hours, we will give you the floor. But right now, the floor is mine, Stephen A. Smith. This is my takeaway on Dwight Howard from a distance. I believe that Dwight Howard chose not to sign long-term with the Los Angeles Lakers. What would it have been, for 5 years?
5 years.
Yeah.
5 years, 118 million.
Because there was no way he wanted to deal with the ultimate pressure of being the face of that franchise post-Kobe Bryant. Even as Kobe's career declines, as he fades into the sunset, there's no way Dwight Howard wanted to be the man of what many believe is the franchise in the National Basketball Association, the one that you grew up loving. Sure. No way did he want a part of that much pressure, because Dwight Howard, in the end, used, to me, no Phil Jackson and Mike D'Antoni as the ultimate excuse. I'm sure there's some truth to it, a little bit of truth, but in the end, in his heart of hearts, he wanted out from under Laker Nation pressure. This is a man with superstar potential who does not have superstar intangibles. He does not have the requisite mental toughness to back up his extraordinary talent. So what do we get? Year after year, we get a man who, once again this year, led the league in rebounds. He's always at the top 2 or 3 in block shots. He changes a lot of shots. But he will never work hard enough on his offensive game or his free throw shooting because he does not want the pressure in fourth quarters of big games and big moments to have to make big shots or big free throws. It's why ultimately nobody can trust him to be a franchise player. So Dwight Howard clowns around to me because he's trying to tell us all, hey, it's only just a game. Don't take it that seriously. Don't take me that seriously. Don't put that much pressure on me. And in the end, Dwight Howard loves to be wanted, to be wooed, to be recruited. So he has continued to thrust himself into these hysterical free agent situations, one after another after another. And you know what the bottom line is? Dwight Howard has gotten more attention for delivering less in the ways of winning in championships than any player I can remember in the history of this league. We talk about him day after day. We were talking about him 2 weeks ago before we left. We are still leading the show with a man who has no championships, and I'm not sure he'll ever win a championship because he will be expected to in Houston at some point soon. And my bottom line on Dwight, and I said this from the start, LA was too big for him, and he should never have left Orlando. He was a big fish in a medium-sized pond that he absolutely loved, and it loved him. And he will always regret leaving Orlando. Never be happy, even in Houston. The pressure's still on him pretty significantly in Houston.
Are you finished?
Yes.
First of all, let me be very, very clear about something here. Every single point that you made, and I do mean every single point, is incredibly valid. Congratulations. I don't refute not a scintilla of what you said. No, there's no but. Because I want you to understand where I'm coming from. I'm just going to tell you, if there is a but, I would say to you that, again, as I always tell you, it's very rare that anybody can question the veracity of your comments, Skip. However, it's usually incomplete. And this is what it is. It's your angle. You see what I'm saying? And you're not wrong, because Dwight does have a lot to prove. He has gotten entirely too much attention for somebody that hasn't won a championship. Oh, by the way, he considers himself a winner. No, champions, people with rings are winners. Everybody else is everybody else. The bottom line is that. Okay, so he has to accept that. But in fairness to him, to me, it sounds like you're saying you're giving very little credence to the whole Laker dynamic. That is Jim Buss, that is Mike D'Antoni, as opposed to Dr. Buss and Phil Jackson. Let's say Dr. Buss, God rest his soul, we're still alive. And Phil Jackson, we're still a coach. You really think Dwight Howard's leaving L.A.? I don't see that. I don't see that.
Address the reports that Dr. Buss did want D'Antoni.
No. Listen, I will tell you this. I haven't heard that, and more importantly, I don't believe it. Dr. Buss wants to win. Mike D'Antoni is a good coach at least offensively. I'm sorry, I don't mean to disrespect Mike D'Antoni, but I wouldn't trust him with a dog with defense. I mean, he just can't. He don't care. I mean, he just started caring about defense. I don't want to hear it. He needs to get over that. But offensively, he knows what he's doing. The problem is, Mike D'Antoni, for his success, has never had a ring, nor has he ever even had an appearance in an NBA Finals. Don't tell me that Dr. Buss on his dying bed is sitting there saying, I really, really want D'Antoni. Stop. Anybody who believes that, you're just smoking something. Just stop the nonsense. It's ridiculous. I don't even want to hear what the Lakers have to say. I'm not questioning the report because I have no doubt that somebody told it to the outstanding reporters like Ramona Shelburne on ESPN LA, Jay Adonde, others. I have no doubt that they've been told that, but I don't want to hear it. I don't believe it. So now we got that out the way. Here's the deal. You're Dwight Howard. Let's remember a couple of things. Houston's the 4th largest city in the United States, the last time I checked. That's not a small market. It ain't Orlando. It's number one.
It's not what Shaq called a small town.
I understand that. It's not what Shaq called a small town. That's number one. Number two, James Harden is a stud. We have two problems. Anybody with sense about the game of basketball has two problems with James Harden and two problems only. Number one, he didn't show up for but a half of the NBA Finals against Miami. That's the only knock against him in his professional career. And by the way, it might help him shave a little bit. He might need shave. That's about it. That's about the only complaint I have about James Harden. Outside of that, this boy is big time. He is completely worthy of the $80 million contract he signed. And even though he hasn't proven to be Kobe, if there was somebody out there to fantasize about who's capable of delivering in big-time moments and really making some noise from that two-guard position, now that Kobe is nearing the end of his career and Dwayne Wade obviously injury-prone, the fact is James Harden is the man to look at. This is the dude that you want to play with. So if I'm Dwight Howard and I'm thinking about my future, I'm saying, okay, I stay in L.A., I got to work for this same dude who I looked at and said I wanted Phil Jackson, flat out ignored me. He flat out ignored Kobe. He wants to do his own thing just because, as opposed to what's in the best interest of the Lakers organization. And oh, by the way, he has made it very, very clear. Players play, we do the rest. You get your contract, you get your money and move out the way because we're going to do what we want to do. I'm going to commit to that as opposed to going to a state income tax-free state like Texas to play for Houston with one of the best off guards in the game, who, by the way, which is also what Dwight told me, Kevin McHale. I don't know if anybody, because you got some youngsters out there wet behind the ears, breath smelling like Similac. Kevin McHale, the coach for the Houston Rockets, who has proven he can coach, by the way, also might be arguably the most unstoppable power forward in the post in the history of basketball. This dude was big time in the low post. All right? And, oh, by the way, when you get away from practice and you just want little private workouts, who's the number one tutor? That would happen to be one of the top 5 greatest centers of all time, and Akeem the Dream Olajuwon, who resides in Houston, who delivered 2 NBA championships to Houston, who starred for the franchise for 17 years, and oh, by the way, in his off time is teaching other dudes how to play the post. Plus, he still has a connection with the Houston Rockets organization. So I look at all of these things, and I say, wait a minute. I'm just supposed to sit there and act like Dwight Howard made the wrong move? He didn't make a bad move.
Okay. He made a shrewd move. Okay. I'm glad you brought up James Harden. Sure. James Harden is still only 23 years of age. He is established already as the man in Houston.
Yes.
So I'm not sure Dwight wants to play with him as much as Dwight wants to play beside him.
Okay.
Because the pressure at first will be mostly on James Harden for all the reasons you said. He is a stud. He is a superstar waiting to happen.
Right.